Thousands of years before the term law of attraction was ever coined, ancient Egyptian priests were already using it, carved into temple walls, encoded in funeral texts, and practiced daily inside chambers that modern science still can't fully explain. And what they knew goes so much deeper than what most self-help books will ever tell you. Most people who encounter the law of attraction today are receiving a filtered, simplified version of something far older, far more precise, and far more powerful. By the end of this video, you'll understand a creation framework so systematic, so internally consistent, that it makes every modern manifestation technique look like a rough draft. We're going to explore 3 specific Egyptian principles. One of them directly predates the law of attraction by over 4,000 years, and I'm going to show you the actual daily practices the Egyptians used, practices you can start applying today. But first, let's establish something important, because what we're about to discuss is not mythology. It is not fantasy. It is a sophisticated philosophical and metaphysical system developed by one of the most intelligent civilizations this planet has ever produced. In 2006, a book called The Secret introduced millions of people to the idea that thoughts become things, that there is a law governing how consciousness interacts with physical reality. It became a global phenomenon. But here's what that book didn't tell you. The idea didn't originate with the authors. It didn't originate with Napoleon Hill or William Walker Atkinson in the early 20th century. It didn't even originate with the Renaissance Hermetic philosophers. Every one of those traditions traces its lineage back to ancient Egypt, specifically to a figure the Egyptians called Thoth, the god of knowledge, language, and the secret mechanics of creation. The Egyptian worldview was fundamentally creationist from the inside out. They didn't believe that the external world shaped the internal one. They believed the exact opposite, that the external world was a continuous expression of an internal reality, that what you experienced in your life was always a reflection of what you carried in your heart. This was not a comforting spiritual metaphor. This was their operational understanding of how reality worked. The pyramid texts dating back to approximately 2400 BCE are the oldest religious writings in human history, and they are filled with declarations, vibrational language, and precise formulas for how a conscious being shapes reality through word, intention, and alignment. These texts were not prayers asking for divine mercy. They were instructions for creation. While modern people are buying vision boards, Egyptian high priests were inscribing their intentions in sacred geometry, literally building their desired reality in stone. And here's the question that should immediately occur to you. Why did Egypt become one of the most architecturally advanced, intellectually sophisticated, and enduring civilizations in human history, lasting for over 3,000 years while most of their contemporaries struggled just to survive? The answer, it turns out, might have very little to do with engineering. The first Egyptian principle we need to understand is called Heka. Most translations render this word as magic, and that translation is not just incomplete, it is dangerously misleading. It causes modern readers to dismiss something profound as superstition. Heka, written in hieroglyphics as HK3, is better understood as the primordial force through which all creation is made manifest, specifically through the unified power of word and will. It is the mechanism by which consciousness translates intention into form. Heka was both a cosmic force and a deity, and here is the remarkable part. The Egyptians believed Heka existed before the gods themselves. In their cosmology, before Atum created the world, before Ra rose in the sky, before any deity took form, Heka was already there. It was the precondition for creation itself. In the coffin texts, a collection of funerary inscriptions dating to approximately 2100 BCE, Heka speaks directly and declares, "I am the one who was before the gods were born. I am the power that precedes thought." Sit with that for a moment. The power that precedes thought. The Egyptians were pointing to something that exists at a level deeper than cognitive intention, a pure creative force that is activated when word and will converge in a state of absolute inner certainty. Now compare this to what the modern law of attraction teaches. Think it, feel it, receive it. 3 steps. Relatively passive, heavily focused on emotion and visualization. The Egyptian model through Heka was different. It operated on 3 distinct components. First, you conceive the intention in the ib, the heart, which the Egyptians considered the true seat of intelligence, not the brain. Second, you declare it with the mouth. You speak it into being with conscious, deliberate language. Third, you activate it through will, through a quality of inner force that goes beyond hope or desire into something closer to certainty. This is a creation formula, not a wish list. And here is what should stop you in your tracks. The Egyptians believed your words were literally creating your reality in real time every single day. Not as a metaphor, as a description of how the universe actually functions. So what does that mean about every complaint you've spoken out loud this week? Every fear you verbalized? Every time you've said, "I can't," "I never," or "that's just how things are for me"? According to Heka, you weren't just expressing your reality, you were building it. Now we come to the principle that the modern law of attraction almost entirely ignores. And this omission, I believe, is the single greatest reason why so many people practice manifestation for years and experience almost no results. This principle is called Ma'at. Ma'at is the Egyptian concept of cosmic order, truth, balance, and justice. She is represented as a goddess wearing a single feather on her head, the feather of truth. And in the famous weighing of the heart ceremony depicted throughout Egyptian funerary art, the heart of a deceased person is placed on a scale and weighed against this feather. If the heart is heavier than the feather, if it is burdened with lies, with unresolved guilt, with inner contradictions, with the gap between what the person claimed to be and what they actually were, the soul cannot ascend. It cannot proceed into the next stage of existence. Now, most people understand this as a concept about morality after death, but that is a very partial reading. The Egyptians applied the principle of Ma'at to everyday life and to the act of creation itself. Here is their essential insight. You cannot create powerfully in a state of inner contradiction. Think about what this means. If your declared intention is abundance, but your deep unspoken belief is that you don't deserve it, Ma'at is not satisfied. If your stated desire is meaningful relationships, but you secretly believe people always leave, Ma'at is violated. And when Ma'at is violated, Heka, the creative force, has no clean channel through which to operate. The creation process becomes blocked at the source. The Egyptians understood something that modern psychology is only now beginning to map scientifically, that the subconscious mind, when it carries beliefs that contradict the conscious intention, will consistently override the conscious mind. They understood this not as psychology, but as cosmology, as natural law. This is why people spend years repeating affirmations and nothing changes. They are attempting to activate Heka without first satisfying the condition of Ma'at. They are speaking what they wish were true while feeling at a deeper level that the opposite is real. And that deeper level is what actually creates. Think of it this way. Ma'at is the operating system. Heka is the software. You can install the most sophisticated, powerful software in the world, but if the operating system is corrupted, if your inner truth is misaligned with your declared intention, nothing runs correctly. The software simply will not execute. Before the Egyptians attempted any act of conscious creation, they first asked themselves, am I in alignment? Is what I am declaring consistent with what I actually believe to be true? Is my inner world in order? And this leads us to the most intellectually striking discovery in this entire video, something that Egyptologists rarely discuss in popular culture, but that completely reframes how the ancient Egyptians understood the deeper mechanics of reality. The Ennead is a group of 9 primordial deities in Egyptian theology, originating in the city of Heliopolis, one of the most important religious and intellectual centers of the ancient world. These 9 deities are not simply characters in a mythology, they are a map. Specifically, they are a map of the stages through which consciousness moves when it brings something from pure potential into physical reality. The sequence is Autumn, then Shu and Tefnut, then Geb and Nut, and finally Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. Let's decode this. Autumn is the self-created one. He emerges from none, the primordial waters, the infinite void that existed before anything else. Autumn represents pure, undifferentiated consciousness, not thought, not intention, not desire. Awareness itself, the awareness that precedes all content. In the language of modern physics, none is structurally analogous to the quantum vacuum field, the zero-point field from which all physical reality emerges the moment it is observed. This is not a scientific claim, it is a conceptual observation, but it is a striking one. From autumn emerge Shu and Tefnut, air and moisture. These two represent the first act of distinction, the moment awareness separates into subject and object, into I and that which I perceive. This is the birth of cognition, the moment a conscious being becomes aware that there is something other than itself. That is when the creative process begins. Then come Geb and Nut, earth and sky. These two represent polarity, the tension between what is and what is desired, between the current reality, solid and heavy like earth, and the potential reality, vast and open like sky. Polarity is not an obstacle to creation. According to the Ennead, it is a required stage of it. And finally, Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. This is where the Ennead becomes most profound and most misunderstood. Set, often portrayed as the god of chaos and destruction, is not the villain of the Egyptian creation story. Set represents resistance, conflict, the force that opposes and tests the intention. The Ennead is telling us something that modern manifestation culture desperately does not want to hear, that creation requires moving through conflict, not around it. That resistance is not a sign that your intention is wrong or that the universe is withholding. Resistance is a necessary stage of the creation process. It is how the intention is tested, refined, and ultimately made real. This is why Osiris dies and is resurrected. This is the death and rebirth at the center of the Egyptian creation story. Creation is not a wish followed by a delivery. It is a cycle. Awareness, cognition, tension, conflict, death of the old form, and rebirth as the new one. The Ennead is not mythology. It is a phenomenology of manifestation, a precise description of what actually happens when a conscious being creates something new. Before we get to the daily practices, there is one more piece of this puzzle we need to place. Most people who have encountered Hermetic philosophy or esoteric traditions have heard the phrase, "as above, so below," "as within, so without." These words come from the Emerald Tablet, one of the most cited texts in Western esotericism, attributed to a figure called Hermes Trismegistus, meaning Hermes the thrice great. Hermes Trismegistus is a syncretic figure, a merging of the Greek god Hermes with the Egyptian god Thoth. The Emerald Tablet is, in its essence, a compressed inheritance of Egyptian cosmological knowledge passed into the Western esoteric tradition. As above, so below means what exists in the realm of pure consciousness and intention will manifest in the physical world, provided the conditions are correct, provided Ma'at is satisfied, provided Heka is properly directed. As within, so without means your inner world, not your wishes, not your vision boards, but your actual vibrational state, your deep, unspoken beliefs, the quality of your daily inner life. That is the template from which your outer world is continuously being constructed. The Hermetic tradition carried this Egyptian knowledge into Greece, into Rome, into the Islamic Golden Age, into Renaissance alchemy, into Freemasonry, into the New Thought movement of the 19th century, and ultimately into the modern law of attraction. What you encounter today in popular spirituality is not a new discovery. It is the most recent and, let's be honest, the most diluted version of a lineage that stretches back to the oldest civilization on Earth. Now let's get specific. Because the Egyptians were not armchair philosophers. They were practitioners. They had precise daily rituals through which they applied these principles. And 3 of them are particularly well documented. The first is the dawn invocation. Egyptian priests rose before sunrise, and as the sun crested the horizon, they recited specific hymns to Ra. These were not prayers of supplication. They were not asking Ra for anything. They were declarations of co-creation. The priest was affirming his alignment with Ma'at, the cosmic order, and declaring his intention for the day as a participant in the ongoing act of creation. The act of speaking aloud at the precise moment of sunrise was considered especially potent for Heka. The Egyptians understood that liminal moments, transitional thresholds between states, carry an amplified creative charge. Dawn was the threshold between darkness and light, between potential and form. It was the optimal moment to plant an intention into the field of creation. The second practice is the naming ritual, connected to the Egyptian concept of the Ren. In Egyptian metaphysics, every person, every place, every object had a sacred name, its Ren, which was considered an actual component of the soul itself. To name something was to bring it into existence. To know the true name of something was to have power over it. And to deliberately give a new name to something was to initiate a change in its fundamental nature. Egyptian scribes and priests applied this directly. They would write, physically inscribe the name of their intended reality as though it already existed. Not, I wish to build a great temple, but the great temple of Ra, which stands at the eastern bank, completed and magnificent. Present tense, already real. The Ren, once written and spoken, began pulling physical reality toward it. This is, word for word, what modern coaches call scripting, writing journal entries as though your desired outcome has already occurred. The Egyptians were doing this 4,000 years ago, in hieroglyphics, on papyrus, as a formal, sacred practice. The third practice is the evening review through the lens of Ma'at. Each evening, Egyptians were encouraged to mentally review their day, not with guilt or self-criticism, but as a calibration. Where was I out of alignment today? Where did my actions contradict my stated intentions? Where did I speak things I did not mean, or mean things I did not speak? This was not moral self-flagellation. It was maintenance. It was keeping the operating system clean so that the next day's creative work could proceed with a clear channel. The weighing of the heart was not only a post-death ceremony. It was something the Egyptians did every single night in miniature as a spiritual hygiene practice. Dawn intention, present tense naming, evening alignment review. 3 daily practices, 4,000 years old. Now let me tell you what the modern law of attraction quietly removed from this system, and why that removal might be the precise reason so many people try manifestation, experience a few small coincidences, and then walk away disappointed. There are 3 critical omissions in the modern law of attraction as it is typically taught. The first is the removal of Ma'at. Modern LOA is almost entirely focused on desire and belief. Think the right thoughts, feel the right feelings, visualize the outcome in detail, and repeat. What it almost never addresses is the quality of your existing inner state, whether you are living in truth, whether your daily actions are aligned with your stated values, whether there are unacknowledged contradictions between what you say you want and what you actually believe you deserve. The Egyptians made this the foundation, not an afterthought. You could not even begin the creative practice of Heka without first ensuring that Ma'at was in order. Inner alignment was not optional, it was the prerequisite. Everything else was built on top of it. Without this foundation, all the visualization and affirmation in the world is like trying to run software on a corrupted operating system. You'll get errors, you'll get crashes, and eventually you'll conclude that the software doesn't work, when the real problem was always the foundation beneath it. The second omission is what I would call the pacification of the creator. The modern law of attraction has been marketed largely as a passive process. Align your vibration, detached from the outcome, and let the universe bring it to you. The role of the creator is to want, to feel, and to receive. But the Ennead tells a fundamentally different story. Creation in the Egyptian model is active, engaged, and specifically requires the creator to move through resistance, through the domain of Set, not around it. The resurrection of Osiris doesn't happen without the death of Osiris first. The new form doesn't emerge without the dissolution of the old one. You cannot manifest a new reality while remaining entirely comfortable in your current one. The Egyptian creator was expected to act, to struggle, to persist, and to transform. The universe was not a delivery service, it was a partner, and like any real partnership, it required your full and active participation. The third omission is the removal of cosmic context. For the Egyptians, individual creation was never purely personal. It was always in service of something larger, of maintaining Ma'at at the cosmic level, of contributing to the order and harmony of the whole. Your personal intentions were meant to emerge from your Ib, your deep heart, which was understood as your most authentic connection to the universal creative force. When your desires are genuinely aligned with your highest purpose, when they are expressions of what you were made to contribute, the full power of Heka becomes available to you. When they are purely self-serving, rooted in lack or fear or the desire to impress others, you are not activating Heka, you are activating its shadow. Modern LOA has largely collapsed this into a system of personal gain. Manifest the car, manifest the money, manifest the relationship. There is nothing inherently wrong with any of those desires. But the Egyptians understood that desire alone, even perfectly visualized, emotionally charged desire, was not enough to activate the deepest levels of the creative force. Purpose was required. Alignment with something larger than the self was required. So let's bring everything together into something you can actually use. Drawing directly from the three Egyptian principles we've explored, Heka, Ma'at, and the Ennead, here is a three-step daily framework that mirrors what the priests and scribes of ancient Egypt practiced every single day. Step 1 is alignment, and it corresponds to Ma'at. This is your morning practice, and it should take about 5 minutes before anything else, before your phone, before your coffee, before your plans for the day. You simply sit quietly and ask yourself one question honestly. Is there anywhere in my life where I am living out of alignment with my own truth? Is there a fear I've been refusing to look at, a resentment I've been carrying, a contradiction between what I say I want and what I actually believe is possible for me? You don't solve it immediately, you simply name it. You write it down if you can. Naming is itself an act of Heka. The moment you name the misalignment, you begin to dissolve its power over your creative process. Step 2 is declaration, and it corresponds to Heka. After you have cleared the channel through your Ma'at check, you speak your intention aloud, not as a wish, not as a hope, as a declaration. Use present tense, first-person language. I am building a life that reflects my deepest values. I am the kind of person who creates value and is compensated accordingly. I am in a relationship characterized by honesty, depth, and mutual growth. Speak it at a transitional moment if possible, at sunrise, at the beginning of a new hour, at the start of a significant task. The Egyptians understood that thresholds amplify creative force. Use them. Step 3 is aligned action, and it corresponds to the Ennead. Take at least one concrete action today that is in direct alignment with your declaration. Not because you are forcing the outcome, not because you distrust the process, but because action is how Heka moves from the inner world into the outer. The declaration without the aligned action is a creative force with no vessel to inhabit. The Egyptians did not wait passively for reality to rearrange itself. They moved intentionally, deliberately in the direction of the intended creation. And in doing so, they met the creative force halfway. Align, declare, act. 3 steps, built from 4,000 years of sophisticated metaphysical practice. This is not magic in the pop culture sense. This is what the Egyptians understood as natural law, as reliable and as impersonal as gravity. The only difference between them and us is that they never forgot it. The ancient Egyptians didn't stumble upon the law of attraction. They didn't discover it accidentally or receive it as a divine gift to be kept secret. They built an entire civilization around it. A civilization that lasted for over 3,000 years, that produced wonders we still cannot fully explain, and that encoded its deepest knowledge in stone precisely so it would survive. What we call manifestation, they called Heka. What we call alignment, they called Ma'at. What we call the universe responding to your vibration, they called the natural expression of a conscious being operating in harmony with cosmic order. The knowledge was never lost. It was diluted, simplified, commercialized, reduced from a complete, internally consistent system of creation into a collection of feel-good techniques. But it was always there, waiting in the pyramid texts, in the coffin texts, in the Ennead, in the Emerald Tablet, in every esoteric tradition that preserved the thread of this lineage through the centuries. Here is the question I'll leave you with. If a civilization 4,000 years ago understood these principles well enough to carve them into stone, encode them in their entire cosmological system, and build the most enduring architectural legacy in human history, what does that say about how much of this knowledge we have actually forgotten? And more importantly, now that you've been reminded, what are you going to do with it? If this video opened something for you, share it with one person you think would benefit from hearing it. Subscribe if you want to go deeper. In upcoming videos, we'll be exploring the Sumerian cosmology of creation, the Vedic concept of Spanda, and the Kybalion and its 7 hermetic principles. And drop a comment right now. Of the 3 principles we explored today, Heka, Ma'at, and the Ennead, which one resonates most with where you are right now in your life? I read every comment. I want to know.